What happens when one of the world's most famous royal figures walks onto a beloved talk show set and completely unravels in front of millions of viewers? In just 34 seconds, a single comment would turn a routine celebrity interview into television chaos, ending with security escorting a prince off the stage while cameras captured every mortifying moment. Graham Norton sat in his signature chair, that warm smile on his face as the studio audience settled into their seats. The energy was electric. Everyone knew who was coming on next. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex himself, was about to make an appearance that nobody in that room would ever forget. The band played, the audience clapped, and Harry walked out onto that stage with the kind of confidence that only comes from a lifetime of privilege. He waved to the crowd, that practiced royal wave, and made his way to the couch beside Graham's chair. "Welcome, welcome," Graham said, standing to shake Harry's hand. "It's wonderful to have you here." Harry sat down, adjusting his jacket, looking around the studio like he owned the place. "Thanks for having me, Graham. Though I have to say, I expected a bit more. Shall we say, grandeur? The palace has better lighting." The audience laughed nervously. Graham's smile tightened just a fraction, but he kept his composure. This was his show. He had handled difficult guests before. He could handle this. "Well, we do our best with what we have," Graham replied smoothly. "Now, you've been making quite a few headlines recently. I thought we could talk about your new project, the charity work you've been doing." Harry leaned back into the couch, spreading his arms wide across the back cushions. Sure. Though I'm surprised that's what you want to lead with. Most people want to talk about the real issues, the institution, the trapped royals, the truth nobody wants to hear." Graham nodded, still smiling. "We can certainly get to that. But first, tell us about the foundation. You've been working with underprivileged youth, helping them find opportunities." "Right," Harry said, waving his hand dismissively. "It's good work, I suppose. Though, let me be honest, Graham, the whole system is broken. These kids need help because the institutions, the very structures that people like you celebrate on shows like this, have failed them." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Graham's eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm not sure I follow. This show celebrates entertainment, conversation, bringing people together." Harry laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Come on, Graham, you're part of the establishment. The BBC, the networks, they all protect the status quo. They protected the institution that tried to destroy my wife. They protected the people who leaked stories about us, who made our lives miserable." Graham's jaw tightened. He was a professional, known for his quick wit and ability to steer conversations back on track. But something in Harry's tone, that accusatory edge, was starting to grate. "I think that's a bit unfair," Graham said carefully. "This show has always been about giving people a platform to share their stories. All kinds of people, all kinds of perspectives." "Right," Harry scoffed. "As long as those perspectives don't challenge the precious monarchy too much, as long as they don't make the British public uncomfortable with the truth about how corrupt and outdated the whole system is." The audience was dead silent now. This wasn't the fun, light-hearted Graham Norton show they had come to see. This was something else entirely. Graham leaned forward in his chair. "Harry, I respect your feelings about your own experiences. I truly do. But I don't think it's fair to come onto this show and suggest that I, or anyone here, is part of some conspiracy to silence you. You've had plenty of opportunities to share your story. You've written books, done interviews, had documentaries made about you. And, every time, people like you question my motives," Harry shot back. "Every time the establishment closes ranks, you all protect each other. The media, the palace, the politicians. It's all connected, Graham, and you know it." Graham's famous patience was wearing thin. You could see it in his eyes, the way his smile had completely disappeared. "I don't know any such thing. What I do know is that you're sitting on my show, in my studio, insulting me and everyone who works here. We invited you here in good faith." "Good faith?" Harry laughed again, louder this time. "You invited me here for ratings, Graham. Let's not pretend this is about anything noble. You wanted the prince on your couch so people would tune in. You're using me just like everyone else has." The audience gasped. A few people started whispering to each other. This was getting out of hand fast. Graham stood up from his chair. His face was flushed. "Now hold on just a moment. I've been doing this show for years. I've interviewed thousands of guests, and never, not once, have I used anyone. I give people a platform to be themselves, to connect with an audience, to have a good time. If that's not what you want, then perhaps you shouldn't have agreed to come here. Harry stood up too, facing Graham. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have known better than to expect anything different from someone who's made millions playing nice with the establishment. That's enough, Graham said firmly, his voice cut through the studio like a knife. I've been more than patient with you. I've tried to have a civil conversation. But I will not stand here and let you insult me, my team, or this show. You don't get to come into my house and behave like this. Your house? Harry's voice rose. This is a television studio, Graham. You don't own this place. You're just another cog in the machine, just another person doing what you're told. Graham took a step back, shaking his head. You know what, Harry? I think we're done here. I really do. This interview is over. Oh, you're cutting me off? Harry's face was red now, his voice dripping with contempt. Of course you are. Can't have the prince speaking truth to power on live television, can we? Can't have someone actually challenging the narrative for once. This has nothing to do with truth or power, Graham said, his voice steady despite the visible anger in his eyes. This has to do with basic respect, something you clearly don't understand. The audience was watching in stunned silence. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others were looking at each other with wide eyes, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Harry pointed a finger at Graham. You want to talk about respect? Where was the respect when the British media was tearing my family apart? Where was the respect when they were printing lies about my wife every single day? Where was your outrage then, Graham? I'm not responsible for what other people write or say, Graham replied. But I'm responsible for what happens on this show, and right now, you need to leave. I'll leave when I'm ready, Harry snapped. You don't get to tell me what to do. Graham turned to someone off camera. Can we get security, please? That's when Harry really lost it, his face contorted with rage. Security? You're calling security on me? Do you have any idea who I am? I know exactly who you are, Graham said coldly. You're someone who's forgotten how to treat people with basic decency. You're someone who thinks their title gives them the right to act however they want. Well, not here. Not on my show. This is unbelievable, Harry said, his voice getting louder with each word. You invite me here, you provoke me with your questions, and then you throw me out when I don't play along with your little game? I didn't provoke you, Graham said, his voice rising to match Harry's volume. I asked you simple questions about your charity work. You're the one who turned this into an attack. You're the one who decided to come here with an agenda and make everyone in this room uncomfortable. 2 security guards appeared from the wings, approaching the couch carefully. The audience watched in absolute shock as they moved toward the prince. Don't you dare touch me, Harry said to the guards, backing away from them. Do you know what will happen if you lay a hand on me? Graham stepped between Harry and the guards. Nobody's going to touch you, but you do need to leave. Now, this is what you all do, Harry said, his voice shaking with emotion. You silence anyone who challenges you. You push them out. You make them the villain. Well, I won't be silenced, Graham. People will hear about this. They'll know what you did here today. What I did? Graham's voice was incredulous. Harry, everyone here saw what happened. Everyone watching at home saw what happened. You came onto this show and immediately started attacking me, attacking the show, attacking everything and everyone. I gave you every chance to have a normal conversation. You're the one who chose this path. Harry looked around at the audience as if searching for support. But all he saw were confused and uncomfortable faces staring back at him. Nobody was on his side. Not in that moment. You're all the same, Harry said quietly, but the microphones picked it up. Every single one of you. Protecting the system that destroys people like me. People like you? Graham's voice was sharp. Harry, you're a prince. You've lived a life of incredible privilege. Yes, you've had your struggles. Yes, the media has been cruel to you at times. But standing here, on my show, acting like you're some kind of victim while you insult everyone around you? That's not being honest. That's not speaking truth. That's just being rude. The words hung in the air. Harry's mouth opened, then closed. He looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. The fight seemed to drain out of him for just a moment. Then his eyes hardened again. I'm leaving. But not because you told me to. I'm leaving because this whole thing is beneath me. This show, this studio, all of it. Then go, Graham said simply. He didn't move. He just stood there, waiting. Harry straightened his jacket, lifted his chin in that royal way, and started walking toward the exit. But he couldn't help himself. He stopped after a few steps and turned back. "You'll regret this, Graham. You'll regret how you treated me today." Graham shook his head slowly. "The only thing I regret is giving you this platform in the first place. I thought you wanted to have a conversation. I thought you wanted to connect with people. But you just wanted to lecture and complain and make everyone else feel small." "I wanted to tell the truth," Harry said. "No," Graham replied. "You wanted to be right. There's a difference." Harry stared at him for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked off the stage. The security guards followed at a discreet distance, making sure he actually left the building. The studio was completely silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. You could hear people breathing. Nobody knew what to say or do. Graham stood there in the middle of the stage, looking exhausted. He ran a hand through his hair and turned to face the audience. His trademark smile was gone, replaced by a look of genuine frustration and disappointment. "Well," he said quietly, "that wasn't quite what I had planned for tonight." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Someone started clapping. Then someone else joined in. Within seconds, the entire audience was applauding Graham, showing their support for how he had handled an impossible situation. Graham held up his hand, asking them to stop. "Thank you, but that's really not necessary. I don't understand what happened there. I genuinely don't." He walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. "I've interviewed prime ministers, presidents, the biggest celebrities in the world, and I've never, in all my years doing this show, had to ask someone to leave. I didn't want to do that, but I couldn't let him continue speaking to me, to all of you, that way." The audience applauded again, louder this time. Graham's eyes were bright, emotional. This had clearly shaken him more than he wanted to admit. "We invited him here because we thought it would be interesting," Graham continued. "We thought he might have something to say about his charity work, his life, his experiences. And instead, he came here with anger and accusations. He came here looking for a fight." Someone in the audience shouted, "You did the right thing, Graham." Others cheered in agreement. Graham smiled weakly. "I hope so. I really do, because that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do on this show. But at a certain point, you have to stand up for yourself. You have to set boundaries. You can't let someone treat you like that, no matter who they are, no matter what title they have." The words resonated through the studio. People were nodding. They understood. They had all been in situations where someone had treated them poorly, and they wished they'd had the courage to stand up for themselves the way Graham just had. "I want to be clear about something," Graham said, leaning forward in his chair. "I don't have anything against Harry personally. I feel sorry for him, actually. He's clearly going through something. He's angry at the world, angry at institutions, angry at people he feels have wronged him, and that anger is eating him alive. You could see it tonight. You could see it in his eyes, in the way he spoke, in the way he couldn't stop himself from attacking and attacking and attacking." The audience listened intently. This wasn't the fun, celebrity-focused Graham Norton they were used to. This was something deeper, more real. But anger like that, it doesn't just hurt the people around you. It hurts you most of all. It isolates you. It makes you see enemies everywhere, even when people are trying to be kind, even when people are trying to help. Graham paused, collecting his thoughts. "I hope Harry finds peace. I really do. I hope he finds a way to let go of all that rage and bitterness, because life is too short to spend it fighting everyone, resenting everyone, blaming everyone else for your pain." The studio erupted in applause again. People were standing now, giving Graham a standing ovation for his grace, his dignity, his willingness to speak honestly about what had just happened. Graham stood up and gave a small bow. "Thank you, truly." Now, I know this isn't the show any of us expected tonight, but we still have time left, and I don't want to end on that note. So let's do something different. Let's take some questions from the audience. Let's have a real conversation, the kind I was hoping to have all along. Hands shot up all over the studio. Graham pointed to a woman in the third row. "Graham," she said, standing up nervously, "I just want to say that you handled that with such class. I don't know how you stayed so calm." Graham smiled. "Well, I wasn't always calm on the inside, I can tell you that. My heart was racing. But when you've been doing this as long as I have, you learn to keep your composure, even when someone's pushing every button you have." He pointed to a man in the back. "Yes, you there." "Do you think he'll apologize?" the man asked. Graham thought about that. "I don't know. I hope so, for his sake more than mine. But apologizing means admitting you were wrong, and I got the sense tonight that Harry believes he's always right. That's a hard place to come back from. Another hand went up. Graham nodded at a younger woman near the front. Have you ever had someone act like that before? She asked. Not to that extent, Graham admitted. I've had guests who were difficult, guests who were having a bad day, guests who didn't want to be there. But I've never had someone come on the show with the apparent intention of starting a fight. That was new. And honestly, I hope it never happens again. The questions kept coming. The audience wanted to process what they'd just seen, to understand it, to hear Graham's thoughts. And he gave them generously, speaking openly about the experience, about his feelings, about the difficult decision to ask Harry to leave. At the end of the day, Graham said, summing up his thoughts, we all have to draw lines. We all have to decide what we will and won't accept from people. And tonight, Harry crossed that line. He crossed it multiple times. I gave him chances to step back, to reset, to have a normal conversation, but he didn't want that. He wanted confrontation, and I wasn't going to give it to him. The audience applauded again. They understood. They respected the choice Graham had made. Graham looked at the camera, addressing the viewers at home. I know a lot of you tuned in tonight expecting to see a fun interview with Prince Harry. Instead, you saw something very different. You saw what happens when someone comes onto a show with an axe to grind, with grievances they can't let go of. And you saw how important it is to stand up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's difficult. He paused, making sure his words landed. We all deserve to be treated with respect. All of us. And when someone refuses to give us that respect, we have every right to walk away. Or in this case, to ask them to leave. The cameras captured it all. Graham's sincerity, his emotion, his strength, the audience's support, the empty couch where Harry had been sitting just minutes before. It was powerful television, just not the kind anyone had planned for. Graham took a deep breath. Right then, let's try to salvage what's left of tonight, shall we? We've got a musical guest waiting backstage who's probably wondering what on earth is happening out here. So let's bring them out and end this show on a positive note. The band started playing, the audience clapped along, and Graham Norton, consummate professional that he was, shifted gears completely. He introduced the musical guest with enthusiasm and charm, as if the last 30 minutes hadn't just turned his show upside down. But everyone in that studio knew, everyone watching at home knew, they had just witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen a host stand up to a prince. They had seen dignity triumph over entitlement. They had seen what happens when someone pushes too far and finally faces consequences. The musical performance was beautiful. The audience swayed and clapped. Graham watched from his chair, his smile back in place, but his eyes still carrying the weight of what had happened. When the song ended and the credits began to roll, Graham gave his usual sign-off. That's all we have. Time for tonight. Thank you for watching, despite the unusual circumstances. Remember, be kind to each other. Good night. The lights dimmed. The audience filed out, still buzzing about what they had witnessed. Backstage, crew members were already on their phones, knowing this would be the biggest entertainment story for weeks to come. Graham sat in his chair for a moment after everyone had left, staring at the empty studio. He looked tired. This wasn't why he had gotten into television. He loved making people laugh, bringing joy into their living rooms, creating moments of connection and fun. But sometimes, television shows you truth instead of entertainment. Sometimes, it reveals character instead of celebrity. And tonight had been one of those times. A producer approached Graham quietly. You okay? Graham nodded slowly. Yeah, I think so. That was just intense. You handled it perfectly, the producer said. Seriously, you were incredible. Graham stood up from his chair, stretching his back. I just did what felt right. What else could I do? You could have let him keep going. You could have tried to smooth things over. No, Graham said firmly. I couldn't. That would have been letting him walk all over me, all over everyone here. Sometimes you have to draw a line. The producer nodded. Well, the line's drawn now, and everyone saw it. Graham walked off the stage, heading toward his dressing room. His mind was already replaying the confrontation, wondering if he could have handled it differently, if there was something he could have said to de-escalate the situation. But deep down, he knew the truth. Some situations can't be de-escalated. Some people are determined to create drama no matter what you do. And when that happens, all you can do is stand your ground and refuse to participate in their chaos. In his dressing room, Graham collapsed onto the couch. He thought about Harry. Walking out of the studio with his head held high, convinced he was right. Convinced he was the victim. It was sad, really. The prince had everything anyone could want. Privilege, platform, resources, but he was so consumed by anger that he couldn't see it. He couldn't appreciate it. He could only fight. Graham closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion wash over him. Tomorrow, the headlines would be everywhere. The clips would go viral. Everyone would have an opinion about what happened tonight. But right now, in this quiet moment, Graham just felt tired. Tired and grateful that he had stood up for himself. Tired and grateful that the audience had supported him. Tired and grateful that, despite everything, he had maintained his dignity. He thought about his next show, already scheduled for the following week. Would people tune in expecting more drama? Would every guest appearance now come with the possibility of conflict? No, Graham decided. Tonight was an aberration, a bizarre moment that wouldn't define his show or his career. He would continue doing what he'd always done, welcoming guests with warmth, creating space for laughter and conversation, bringing a little bit of joy into people's homes. But he would also remember tonight. Remember that sometimes standing up for yourself means asking someone to leave. Remember that respect is a two-way street. Remember that no title, no matter how grand, gives someone the right to treat others poorly. Graham opened his eyes and looked at himself in the mirror across the room. He looked older, somehow, more worn. But there was something else in his expression too. Strength, resolve, the knowledge that he had done the right thing. He smiled at his reflection. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new shows, new guests. But tonight, he had proven something to himself. He had proven that when pushed, he could push back. That when tested, he could stand firm. And that, more than any successful interview or funny moment, was worth remembering.